This is episode number 6 with Nadine Levin, founder and CEO of Pipe Dream Cupcakes. Welcome to the Good Life Coach podcast. I am your host, Michelle Lamoureux. The intention of this show is to awaken you to your fullest potential. Join me each week for inspiring interviews to elevate an area of your life, as well as interviews with women entrepreneurs who are creating success on their own terms. Each episode provides actionable tips to guide you to design a life you love. Hey there, this is Michelle. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the podcast. I am so thrilled that you're tuning in. And today's show is going to be short and sweet because I have on the founder and CEO of Pipe Dream Cupcakes. Nadine worked in the fast-paced world of advertising for over 15 years when she decided it was time to focus full-time on her true passion, which was baking. So in 2012, Nadine delivered on her dream to provide her customers with the highest quality, delicious, all-natural, and beautiful creative cupcakes. Nadine has been awarded the Best of the North Shore of Massachusetts for 5 years in a row. You'll hear us say 4, but she won another year since we recorded this episode. As you're listening, you may also have your own pipe dream that you want to see come to fruition. And my hope is with each of these women entrepreneurs that I feature on the show, there'll be some not just inspiration that it's possible, but specific takeaways, both from their lessons learned and from their best tips on how to be successful. So let's get into the interview today, and I'd love to hear your feedback. You can just go over to thegoodlifecoach.com/006 for this episode for all of the show notes. I know many of you tune in while you're walking your dog or you're at the gym, going for a walk, maybe you're home cooking or baking yourself. So however you're tuning in, I've got you covered with all of the notes so that you can just focus on whatever it is you're doing. And again, you can access those at thegoodlifecoach.com/the episode number that you're listening to. And today's is 006. So let's get on into the interview. Hey, Nadine, welcome to the show today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. I think your story is so cool and so interesting, and I'd love to just dive right in and have you share how you went from working in corporate America for 15 years. You were the number one salesperson for doing ad sales, and then you launched a food truck selling cupcakes out of a food truck just 6 years ago. How did that come about?
Well, I worked in advertising for about 15 years, and during that time, I was working part-time, and so I have 2 children, and they wanted me to work full-time, and it wasn't really part of my plan because I really wanted to be with my kids, and they were little at the time. So I ended up leaving and going to a startup, and when I was at the startup was not as profitable as I thought it would be. They didn't have any funding, and so at that point, I wasn't really doing what I loved anymore, and it got to a point where baking was just a hobby of mine, and I did a couple weddings, and it kind of got to a point where I thought, if I'm working and I'm not doing what I love, I might as well leave and do something that I love, and go from there. And I took a risk and left and did research and started my own company.
So I find that so interesting because I think a lot of people have these ideas or their visions, but to actually make it work is a whole other ballgame. So I'm curious, what did you do to figure out, how to start this venture that was so different than what you were doing before?
Yeah, well, so I worked in Boston, and there's tons of food trucks. And when I went to that startup I was only there for about 6 months. And when I was there was a woman I met, And she was about 10 years younger than me, and she went to the same college as me, and she owned a truck that was a fashion truck. She sold fashion out of the truck. And she was really inspiring, and I was listening to her talk, and she, like when I was listening to her, I thought, I can do this. Like, why can't I have a truck and sell cupcakes? Because I looked at different locations to rent space or lease space, and it is so costly to lease space. Like leasing space is just one aspect of it. And after you think of the space, then there's insurance and there's employees and there's workers' comp. And when you add all that stuff up, I thought, this is never going to happen. And if it did happen, I won't be successful because being around town, I've seen so much turnover in all these businesses, and even businesses that they're not food related. It could be a clothing store or, a candy store or whatever the business is. The rent around here is so high that all these places end up folding and closing. So at the time, I thought the only way to make this happen is to have a food truck. There's no overhead, and I mean, you have to invest in the truck, but other than that, I don't have to worry about any of the other hassles. And being a one-person show, I can control everything. I can control when I'm out. I can control when I'm not out. I can control, what I make. I can just do whatever I want. So after speaking to this woman who owned this fashion truck, she kind of inspired me. So I started looking at other food trucks that sold cupcakes in other parts of the country. And I would call them, and some people would talk to me, some people wouldn't. And I would just ask them questions and ask them, what's one thing that you can tell me that I should be aware of? Or I just asked them one question because I knew they didn't want to talk to me for an hour about their business. So I would just call random people across the country. And because if I called someone that was local here, they wouldn't want to talk to me because they would think I would be a competitor. Mm-hmm. So I would just call random food trucks in Chicago or California or Florida and just ask them questions. And then I found a place in North Carolina that I could get my truck from, and I ordered, I figured out what I needed, and it was a lot of research to figure out if I could even have a food truck in my town and what I needed in the food truck, because I just thought, I didn't even realize I needed a sink in my food truck for sanitary purposes, and
right.
I needed washable diamond plate floors and like little things like that I didn't know. So a part of my research before I did all this was just talking to people. And I met with, and even before I quit my job, I met with a woman who owned a bakery in a town north of me. And she was nice enough to meet with me. She actually knew, it was in Newburyport, and she knew another friend of mine. So he kind of introduced me to her. And she asked me basic questions like, do you have your ServSafe, which is a license you need to handle food? And I never even heard of that. And I said, no. She's like, well, before you do anything, that's what you need to have. So she told me basic things that I didn't even know. So she's like, you need your ServSafe, and you need this, and you need that. And she was a little wary of talking to me because I'm a half an hour away. But her primary business was making like big wedding cakes and, big party cakes. It wasn't cupcakes, but cupcakes was kind of like a side. So I would ask her questions, and she kind of guided me and saying, this is what you need to do. This is the basic stuff, which no one told me about the basic stuff.
Right.
And, so it's just trying to become friends with other businesses that are like the one that I want to create. And hopefully people will help you. And it's funny because I asked the woman that owned that fashion truck, obviously cupcakes are not fashion, but she was very willing to help me. And she told me that people ask her all the time about starting up their own fashion truck. And I said to her, aren't you worried that they're going to, start, being in your territory or taking away your business? And she said in all the years she's been doing this, she gets a million inquiries. People call her all the time. And she said, no one ever started a truck. She said, you're the only one that actually took the initiative and did something with it.
Yeah, that actually makes sense because, I mean, starting a company takes so much work and the idea may be
Hmm.
great, but you really need a lot of tenacity, I would imagine. So I'm actually
Yeah,
curious from, you wanted to bake. That was the original concept. Like, I want to bake. You researched storefronts and realized, well, that's going to be very expensive and they don't
right.
do as well. So from concept to when you switched to this idea of food truck, from concept to launch, how much time did that take you?
Probably like a couple months, like 3 months, because I had to figure out. I mean, I was in touch with the town to figure out if I got a food truck, where can I park my truck? Where can I go? And then I talked to the health inspector because I called the police department and said, where can I park? And they said, anywhere there's a legal parking spot, you can park. Then I would call the health department. I would say, okay, if I buy a truck, once it's shipped to me, what are some of the things I have to make sure I have so that it's approved? Because she was telling, like that health inspector would say, what's going to be in your truck? And I'd say, I don't know. I don't know what needs to be in it. Like I had no idea. Then like I didn't realize I needed the sink and I needed washable floors and I needed, like I have a baker's rack in the truck, but I had to make sure it was covered for sanitary purposes. I needed gloves. Just even though like a cupcake has a wrapper on it, uh, under the health code, I can't serve someone a cupcake with my bare hands. I have to use a glove, like a plastic glove. So these are all little things that, like, if she came to inspect my truck and I didn't have gloves on my truck, she wouldn't have passed me. So like little things like that. So I just did all the research and I figured out where I was going to go and what towns I was going to be in. And to be honest, it's a leap of faith. I was just going to do it and see what happens.
Yeah, I would say absolutely, and I'm actually impressed 3 months. I thought you were gonna tell me a year. Like, that seems you must have been working hard every day. How did you structure your time? Like, how did you know what to get up and focus on for that day? Because time management when you're starting a business and prioritizing is so key to success. So how did you figure that out and navigate that?
Well, it was first of all, it was figuring out where I was going to get all my supplies from. So I did a lot of research. Like is it cheaper to buy it at, the regular local store, or is it cheaper to go to Costco, or is it cheaper to find, a distributor in Boston that sells me 50-pound bags of cocoa powder and 50-pound bags of flour. So as a small business, like you really have to. But the first important step was to figure out where I was going to buy everything. Where am I
Hmm.
going to buy my eggs? Where am I going to buy my milk? Because, that's where you need to save your money. Like every little penny counts. Like even like the boxes I buy, like how much are these boxes? And, if I sell a cupcake for $3.25 and somebody wants a box and the box is 50 cents, that cuts into my profit. So everything, it was a lot of research of where I was going to buy everything and, how was I going to make sure that I would make the most of every penny that I was spending.
Nadine, I'm trying to picture you in the kitchen on that first day that you're gonna take your truck
Oh,
out. Can you take us to that
yeah,
launch day? Like, what did that look like? What was your family, like your
yeah,
husband, your kids, were they're like, "Mommy, I want cupcakes." Like, I can't even imagine
yeah,
you, like, baking and how many did you make? Like, it's just
yeah.
it's
So,
yeah, take us to that
so
day.
that day, so first of all, driving my truck was very scary because it's a very big truck, and I didn't have a backup camera at the time. So I think the most nerve wracking thing was parking it because you know, parallel parking this big truck. It's just that was most nerve wracking. So my husband actually took the day off of work, and he was with me. I felt like it was yesterday. My kids went to school. They don't really care. But it was raining. It was raining the whole day. It was just a bad day.
Right.
But on Facebook, everyone knew that this was the day I was going to be out, and it's so funny because back then now I'm so much more efficient in baking. But back then, I don't even remember the quantity I made, but the time it took me to bake was
Mm.
so long. And I think, and also because I didn't know what I didn't memorize all the recipes at that point. Like now I don't even use the recipe books. I know them in my head, but it has, oh, how many cups of flour? Is it one? Is it two? And how much is it baking powder or baking soda? Which one is it? So like it was a lot of, it just took more time to make however many I made that day. And it was just it was something that you had no idea what you're doing. And I think I look back at the first cupcakes I made, and they weren't as pretty as they are now. And I think, and some of them were more time consuming to make, and I'm like, I'm not making that anymore. Like some of the frosting would be more intense. I'm like, oh God, no one notices the difference of that. I'm not spending that much time making that cupcake.
Right.
So you kind of find different ways to not jeopardize your product, but just to make your process easier. Like I'd make my vanilla frosting first, and then my chocolate last. So that I wouldn't have to keep, like if I make my chocolate first, I'd have to wash the bowl. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
So
Hmm.
little things like that, so that I would make it easier for me.
I'm just trying to picture you in that environment. And I'm curious, do you still love baking as much as you did when you launched it?
Yeah, I do like it. I hate the setup and the cleanup. So before I go to bed at night, I set up everything, so that when I wake up, everything's already set up. But everything's heavy. Like my two blenders are heavy, and I have big Tupperwares of the it's like 50 pounds of sugar and 50 pounds of flour, and I take that out, and I just set everything up, and then when I'm done, I have to clean everything and put everything away. So that to me is the worst part, is the setup and the cleanup. But in between that, it's fine. Like I don't mind baking it, and it's nice to do it. But I wish I had little minions to help clean up for me.
And now, are you a one-woman team, Nadine?
Yeah, I do everything myself. I don't have any help. I mean, my husband will maybe wash my truck sometimes for me, or he'll maybe get me gas. But other than that, I do everything.
Hmm. What's been like one of the most rewarding experiences you've had doing what you do?
I just think it's everyone's happy to see me. I mean, I don't really have anyone that's not happy to see me.
You're the cupcake lady. So I have friends who live
Yeah,
in your town, and I know that you're affectionately known as the cupcake lady, right? People love you. They look
yeah,
forward to seeing you. So that's a nice feeling.
yeah, yeah. It could be worse, right?
Yeah, yeah, you're bringing the
Yeah,
goodies.
yeah. So it's nice.
So how has your life changed over these last 6 years now that you're your own boss? Like, do you like it more having your autonomy?
Yes, I love having my own schedule. So, health and fitness is really important to me, even though I make cupcakes every day. Um, so I make sure like I work out every morning. So I wake up in the morning and I bake. And then after I'm done baking, I have time to go to the gym, come back and shower, and then I go on the truck. So it's something that when I used to work in the city, I only could work out in the days I didn't go in the office. So the fact that I can work out every single day, and it's like that's my time for me, um, it's nice to have that flexibility.
What are the 3 best pieces of advice you could give to the women listening that maybe wanna start their own pipe dream? They have their own pipe dream that they've been sitting on, and they wanna launch something. What could you offer them?
Well, do your homework. Make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Because a lot of people say, "Oh, I wish I wanted to do that. I want to open up my cupcake shop or my whatever it is," and they don't really know the amount of work it takes. So do your research. Know exactly what you're getting yourself into, um, and don't let anyone tell you you can't do something. Because there's a lot of people before. Like I had to get my kitchen certified, and many people said, "Oh God, good luck getting that." The health inspector's awful, and she'll never approve your kitchen. And there's a lot of like naysayers, and
Mhm.
you know what, the health inspector was wonderful, and she helped me, and my kitchen got approved. So if you do what you're supposed to do, then those naysayers are the people that don't do what they need to do. So
Mhm. Yeah.
um don't let people discourage you. um like I remember telling my parents, and they're like, "Are you really sure you want to do this?" And like they didn't, you know, but it's like, yeah, I am. So if you believe in what you're going to do and you have a solid plan, then you're going to be fine. And of course, there's going to be roadblocks along the way, but just don't let anyone discourage you from what you want to do.
That's great. So be organized, do your research, don't listen to the naysayers.
Right? Exactly.
And the third piece?
The third one, I think in the beginning, like, you end up doing everything you end up saying yes to everybody, and it's funny, I saw a quote the other day that said something about discounting. If you don't know what you're worth, that's when you discount your product. But when you know what you're worth, you don't need to discount your product anymore. And I am paraphrasing, but I thought it was so interesting because when I first started, you would do anything for the business. Like someone would call you, and like, oh yeah, I'll do it for this, or I won't charge you the travel fee, or I won't charge you, this. And now I'm thinking, oh gosh, no, I'm charging you the travel fee, and I'm charging you, for the extra boxes, and because you know your worth now, and it's important that in the beginning, yeah, you need to be flexible, but then as you get more secure of what you're doing and more confident what you're doing, then you're like, you know what? I'm going to stand behind my product, and if it's not what you want, then I'm not the right person for you.
That's great. So you had clarity and confidence in what you were offering and didn't feel like you needed
Right.
to discount that after that.
Right. Exactly.
I think that's yeah, I think that's so powerful. Yeah, and I think that women in particular are the first to put themselves on sale, for lack of a better way of saying it. But we will discount, we will make accommodations because we're used to pleasing others. And um, that becomes a situation where we can do more harm than good to our business. You're right. You need to know your worth and know you're not on sale. And if you're putting out a good quality product, you need to stand by that, and people will go by the energy that you're putting out.
Right. Well, it's funny because some people come and they say, is there a deal if I buy like this many cupcakes? And like, it's funny, like people are always looking for a deal. And I'm like a small business, one person shop. And I think to myself, do you walk into Stop and Shop and ask when you buy, let's say you buy 3 gallons of milk, do you ask them if the third one is free? Like I don't understand why people think that they can do that, you know?
It's interesting because you're also a very friendly person and you have such a nice smile, welcoming smile. I wonder if they see you in your
Oh, thank
truck,
you.
but I wonder if they see you in your truck and think, "Oh, she looks really nice." Maybe they'll maybe if I ask nice, she'll give me a free cupcake or something. I don't know.
Maybe. But
Maybe.
it's just funny how people think that they can get a better deal. It's like, well, wait a minute. You don't, if you call a corporate, when you go get your cell phone or you go to Apple Store, are you saying to them, can I have a better deal on my iPhone? It's just people don't do that. But I think they feel that since I'm a one person shop that they can do that. And I feel kind of disrespected when they ask me that.
Right. But I think it's been, like you said, it's not only a good lesson for you, but now you've just shared that lesson for the other people who are listening who may be struggling with that because they may be launching a health coaching business or some other service based business or even product based business. And it might be a friend
Hmm.
or somebody they're close to or who are trying to get things for free and they're struggling with trying to actually be profitable. And so that
Right.
becomes
Yeah.
the challenge. You're like you said, you're a one person shop, and there's a lot of us out there who are really starting everything from scratch, and everything we do is an investment for our business, especially that first year. It's really just outputting. You're constantly paying for things, whether it's a course to
Right.
learn something you didn't know or whatever it is. So let's switch gears and go into the rapid fire questions. I would love to know how Nadine defines success because we all define it differently.
Uh, to me, success is having happy. When people send me a message and say your cupcakes were the best or they were great, to me that's success. Even though I've been doing this for 6 years, I still wonder like, was it good? Did you still like it? Like I don't know. Like even though it's the same recipe and I'm doing the same thing, I'm still not overconfident and think, oh, it was perfect. I always send them a message after and say, hey, how was your event? Was it good? Were the cupcakes good? So you never know. Sometimes you never hear negative feedback. You only hear the good stuff. So I never know if someone's not satisfied.
Uh-huh.
So I always, when people tell me that they are, it's that's success to me.
So, the second question, what resource has most influenced your life? It could be a book, a quote, a piece of art, person.
Um, I think other people in the industry, social media is amazing now, and Instagram and Facebook. And I try to follow other bakers across the country, and I like to see what they're doing, and I like to be inspired by what they do, and try to make something my own. So I think any other baker out there inspires me. So I like to see what they do, and or see what they do that I don't like, and try to make it better.
That's great. And I'm wondering, with the success that you've had, and it's just thinking back to you saying you launched in 3 months. I'm still kind of blown away by that. So, Nadine, you've been voted Best of North Shore for 4 years in a row. You've clearly been very successful with this venture that was your pipe dream, hence the name of your company, Pipe Dream Cupcakes. So, I'm curious. I would imagine that you have either or both a morning or evening routine that lets you stay organized and focused on your priorities and goals.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a routine. I mean, like I said, every night I set up for the next morning. I wake up early. I'm up around between 4:30 and 5, and my goal is to bake and get everything done so I can go to the gym in the morning. The gym is super important to me. It makes me sane. And I come back and I shower, and then I'm on the truck, and then I'm normally back and I can help the kids with what they need. But that's really my ritual, and that's what I do every day, 7 days a week. Yep.
Wow, that's great. I think as long as I've known you, you've been committed to taking care of your body.
Yeah, I think it's important.
What's the mindset that keeps you committed to that goal?
All the cupcakes that I eat.
Well, I was gonna ask you, do you eat your cupcakes every day? I mean, you must have to try them as you're baking, but do you
Yeah,
indulge?
I do. So I do eat them, and that's why I'm dedicated to the gym. So it's funny. I always say a cupcake won't make you fat, but eating lots of cupcakes will. So, yeah.
That's great. Well, how can people learn more about you if they are curious about your venture and wanna dig a little deeper?
Well, they can go to my website, pipedreamcupcakes.com. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. They can always follow me and see what I'm making or doing.
What are your handles on those mediums?
So it's Pipe Dream Cupcakes for Facebook. It's Pipe Dream Cup on Twitter, and it's Pipe Dream Cupcakes on Instagram.
That's great. Is there any question that I didn't ask you that you wished I had today?
No, I think you asked a lot of good questions.
Thanks, Nadine. It's been such a pleasure having you on.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. It was nice to talk to you.
You too. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. I'd love to hear what resonated with you. So come on over to the goodlifecoach.com podcast page. While you're there, you can look at all the show notes from today's episode and join my newsletter. As a thank you, you'll receive the first chapter of my book for free. Thanks so much for listening, and bye for now.